the Green River Formation here in Wyoming. This is an adventure that's 50 million years in the making. Right now, I'm in one of the major fossil quarries here in Kemmerer, Wyoming. We're looking for fossils that date back to the Eocene Epoch, over 50 million years ago. Today, Wyoming, this part of Wyoming, is rather dry, fairly arid, but 50 million years ago, it was very, very different. We find all sorts of amazing fossils here, from giant tropical plants like palm, to over 27 different species of fossil fish, large reptiles like crocs and turtles, all sorts of amazing fossils. How did these fossils form in the first place? If we traveled back in time to the Eocene, there were 3 massive lakes right in the center of the North American continent. The Green River Formation encompasses Wyoming here, and then also in Colorado and in Utah. Let's say when a fish dies in Fossil Lake, which is where we are now, the animal would sink to the bottom of these lakes and land on the lake bottom. There were microbial mats that would have covered the fish and adhered it to the lake bottom, but also give it a coat as well, a film that would have helped in preserving the fish. Over millions of years, all that would remain would be the skeleton of the fish, and as sediment stacked on top of the organism, it would have squished the fish flat. How incredible is that? Now, to understand the origin of Fossil Lake, we actually have to go all the way back to the Cretaceous period. Starting 120 million years ago, a massive inland sea cut North America in half. It's called the Western Interior Seaway. It lasted all the way up until the end of the Cretaceous, around 66 million years ago. This was partly due to the newly forming Rocky Mountains. Through a process called orogenesis, as the Rockies began to erupt and emerge, the seaway began to recede. But as that seaway was receding, it created these large basins and depressions here in Wyoming as well as in Colorado and Utah. Over millions of years, these basins filled up with water, creating the 3 large lakes that were around during the Eocene Epoch. Now this right here, this is how we find fossils from the Green River Formation. We find them in these slabs of laminated limestone. To split this limestone, I got my trusty tools, I got my rock hammer, and I also got my chisel. Now, you don't want to smash the limestone, because if you do that, your fossil's good as toast. The way you want to think about this slab is that it's almost like a book, right? So you have your covers on either side here, and then up top here, these are your pages. What you want to do, you want to work right up top. You want to pick a good midway point, take the flat end of your hammer, squirt it right down there. What do you guys think I'm going to find? Leave a comment down below. All right. So this layer is ready to be split. Are you guys ready for the big reveal? I reckon there's about 3 stingrays in this slab. Let's have a look. No way. Guys, have a look at this. Fossil poop. Coprolite. Wow. Man, thank you for sharing this moment. How cool is this? 18 million year old poop. While coprolite is probably the most common fossil found here in this quarry, that's far from the only fossil that you can find here. We also will probably find some fossil fish and maybe even some rarer organisms as well, like plants, mollusks, maybe even a reptile or a mammal. Let's go see what we can find. There we go. So we're starting to... So this right here is one of the nicer fish that we found so far. This is Diplomistus. It's a freshwater relative of herring. This guy, he's pretty small. He's an adolescent, but they get much bigger than this. The largest Diplomistus can be over 20 inches in length. Now, these guys, they have very interesting cranial morphology. If you look at the head is turned slightly up. So these guys were predators. They probably would have fed on smaller fish. What they would do is they would wait near the surface, and as things would, smaller fish or maybe even insects as well, as they were flying or swimming below the surface, these guys would come up and whoosh, snatch it up just like that, whoop, whoop, swallow it down whole. And sometimes they got a little bit ahead of themselves. We've actually found large Diplomistus that have apparently choked to death trying to swallow really large fish that they couldn't swallow correctly. But yeah, very cool. And even though these guys are predators, they themselves were prey for a wide variety of large carnivores that lived in Fossil Lake, including crocodiles and large turtles. Very, very cool find, but there's plenty of more fossil fish to find. Let's get back to work. Yeah, it's like 10 layers. Die over 20 years. I split open another large slab. I didn't find much, but I was able to split it again, and I was able to find this nice Nidea. Now, Nidea is the most common vertebrate fossil found in the Green River Formation. Almost every slab that you split, if you're going to find a fish, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one of these guys. These are the state fossil of Wyoming. And since 1870, when people first started working in the Green River Formation, over 600,000 specimens of Nidea have been discovered. These guys, they were large shoaling fish. Like Diplomistus, they were freshwater herring relatives. Unlike Diplomistus, which lived in small shoals, these guys lived in really large shoals. In fact, some slabs have been found with, over 50 Nidea deposited in the same slab together. Absolutely phenomenal. Now, I would really like to find one of those massive mass mortality slabs, but to do that, we have to keep digging. Well, let's get back to it. Now this right here is very significant. When we first split this slab, we thought that this might have been a coprolite, but on closer inspection, we found that it was actually a freshwater gastropod shell. It's in the genus Goniobasis, and these guys are actually fairly common in these near-shore sediments. They're very, very interesting. They would have been prey to a lot of the large shell-crushing fish that lived here in the Green River Formation. And they can tell us a lot about the ecosystem, too. We do find lots of mollusks here in the Green River Formation, but gastropods are by far the most diverse. Occasionally, their shells would wash up onto shore as well. Very, very cool find indeed. You don't normally find them with this nice coloring right here. Awesome. Well, here, let's go see what else we can find. Well, it's a nice fish, but the matrix, not so much. But what we can do is we can saw this slab and we can maybe make it a little bit more prettier. Let's go try out the saw real quick. So this right here is probably one of the more impressive fish that we found. This is Prissacara, and he is a relative of bluegill and sunfish. They're pretty recognizable when you find them. You have these beautiful spines right on the top of their back here. They also would have had some smaller ones down here on their ventral side. These guys, there's actually two species of bluegill relative here in the Green River Formation. There's Prissacara and there's Coprolites as well. The Prissacara, they're actually larger. They can actually get close to over 17 inches in length, which is pretty impressive. Now, these guys were feeding primarily on crustaceans, probably small fish fry as well, but they too were on the menu for a lot of large predators in the Green River Formation as well. You can actually see here the vertebrae are actually pretty well defined, and that's probably really good for muscle attachment. So these guys were very powerful swimmers. They could move for very quick bursts of speed to either go after food or avoid being food themselves. Well, this is a pretty good start to the day, but we got more to find. Let's keep going.
Or is that another animal? See all the teeth right there with the jaw?
No, that's pretty. That's very similar.
Okay.
That matches up.
Yeah, look at the imprints of the teeth.
Yeah. The guy was telling me that so there's two bass relatives here. There's the Coprolites, which is this, and then there's the Prissacara. The Coprolites, they don't have any serrations on their spines, but the other species does.
I love that jaw outline though.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, those are teeth. Yeah, that feels loose. So we just split open another large slab. Have a look at this. We got a partial Diplomistus right here, but look at this. It's a coprolite. I'll tell you what, I've been finding more coprolite than anything else here at the Green River Formation today. And that makes a lot of sense. You gotta think, a fish can only die once, but a fish can poop multiple times a day. So coprolite is actually one of the more common fossils that are found here. We do occasionally find really large vertebrate poop like croc and turtle, but they're much rarer than fish poop, which is what this is. What's really cool, unlike the fossil fish, the coprolites are preserved in 3D. They don't seem to get squished as much as the fish. Really quickly, this is one of the last fossils that we found today. Let's have a quick overview of the table and see what cool fossils we found today. So check this out. Really quick, guys, this is a nice little example of what we found today. These are some of the nicer things that we found here, splitting fish. Now, really quick, I like to think that I know quite a lot about fossils, but I learn something new every single day. So these books right here, like this one by Dr. Steve at GeoWorld, really great, useful guide. Also, History's Aquarium as well. Excellent guide for identifying Green River fossils. I'm here with the floor manager, Adam, for the American Fossils Quarry. I had a few questions, Adam, really quickly. If we were to go back in time 52 million years ago at this spot in Wyoming, what would we have seen? What kind of weird flora and fauna would have been here?
So right where we're at, we're about 2 miles into the lake. So the shore would have been about 2 miles that way. And around the lake, it was a sycamore forest, mostly. There was a lot of other tree species, but predominantly sycamore. And this would have been a little bit different from what we would expect in a tropical climate now. There were no large mammal predators yet. The largest was about the size of a cat. The largest predator would have been Borealisuchus, the crocodilian that was out here. There were tapirs, parrots, all kinds of different things that you wouldn't expect to find in Wyoming. The plants would be pretty similar to what you'd find in Florida or Costa Rica. So palm fronds, lily pads, all kinds of just very warm climate flora and fauna.
Heck yeah.
Very cool. And you mentioned that this was a lake, so this was a freshwater ecosystem?
Yes. Yep.
Very interesting. I'm curious because we do occasionally find stingray fossils out here.
Yes.
How do we have stingrays here in the middle of the American continent?
So these are the world's only articulated freshwater stingray fossils. And it's thought that they were remnants of what was left of the Western Interior Seaway stingrays. So as the Western Interior Seaway retracted back out to sea, there might have been some stingrays that were left stranded in these more alkaline lakes. And then in the time between then and now, they would have evolved into more freshwater stingrays, though still in somewhat brackish water.
Very cool. Now, earlier you mentioned parrots, too. That has me thinking, what was bird diversity looking like post non-avian dinosaurs?
The bird diversity here was very, very high. There were about 20, as far as we know now, there were about 29 species of fish here. There are way more species of birds. So finding a bird, the chances are much higher that that's a new species. So there were very many species of birds. We had little tiny songbirds. We had parrots. We had big wading birds. We had frigate birds, falcon-like birds of prey, all kinds of. So the diversity was very high.
Very interesting. And what does that diversity tell us about the ecosystem here in Fossil Lake?
The ecosystem would have been very, very rich in all kinds of aspects. There were lots of insects. We don't find insects in this quarry very much. But in the 18-inch layer, there are many insects found. There's march flies, there's dragonflies, damselflies, all kinds of insects that the insectivorous birds would have been preying on. And then the food chain and food web would have gone up to all the other kinds of birds feeding on all the kinds of things.
Oh, very, very cool. Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you for answering my questions, man.
No problem.
And thanks for digging with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Now, we got a couple of nice Diplomistus over here that were really recognizable. These are really nice. Here's the one with coprolite. Here's the freshwater gastropod that we found earlier as well. This is a really nice coprolite, probably from a turtle or a croc. Here's a nice little fish coprolite. There's some Nidia over here. This is one of our nice Trissicara that we found. It needs a little bit more prep. We'll take this back to the Tyrannostorus and do a little bit of work on it, and it'll look really nice. Here's a little Ferriotus as well. Here's a nice Nidia. Man, I'll tell you what, I wanted to say thank you for coming on this adventure with me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your support. I truly appreciate it. And if you want to see some of the fossils that we found while we were out here this week, come check us out at the Tyrannostorus. Remember, stay passionate about science and natural history. We hope to see you soon.